Good morning, Liberty. We are live. It is Monday morning. Happy Monday to you. I hope your week is off to a great start. December the 10th, 2018. My name is Michael Boldin, your humble host from here at the 10th Amendment Center, broadcasting live from my home studio and office on the West Coast in downtown Los Angeles. So good morning to you, or good afternoon, good evening, whether you're watching us live or in the archives. I'm very grateful for you being here with me today. And especially for those who are listening to the audio-only version of this as the podcast, you may be confused why I'm chatting with people, but we do this show as a live stream broadcast. The original recording is a live stream broadcast through our channel over at YouTube, youtube.com/10th Amendment Center, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. And then we take the audio from that, submit it to as a podcast for iTunes and Google. We'll expand that soon, probably after the Christmas season and the New Year. And then we also share it in the archives to our other alternate video channels like BitChute and Brighteon.com, Keyport.tv. We also post over at Minds, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere possible. You know why? Even though some of those platforms like Facebook, I can't stand them personally, it's still a great way for us to reach new people, and we're going to continue reaching as many people as we can while we can. So I want to say hi to a few people in the live chat here on Facebook. Joseph Standridge, awesome. I appreciate you, your retweets over on Twitter. Domo, first time catching us live. Thank you. I appreciate all your comments that you leave in the archives. That's awesome. Hi to Existence. Taco Salad, haven't seen you in a while. Richard Robertson as well. And really appreciate you guys joining us. Taco Salad says, I don't know how you could stand living in California. Well, you know, I like my tyranny warm. So I think that's how we get down to it. Hi to Larry Clark as well. So today, Monday morning, I want to hammer on Republicans a little bit. It's easy to hammer on Democrats. And I think the issue I have with Republicans, and I think with the author who Lawrence Vance, who I read pretty regularly. He writes at Future of Freedom Foundation, FFF.org, LouRockwell.com pretty regularly. That's where I found him first. And then you'll find him on Mises.org and a number of other sites. Lawrence Vance is a longtime Liberty guy, really solid in his writing. And he's very consistent. So he holds his principles no matter whether it's something that everybody else likes or not. Whether it's a Republican in charge or a Democrat in charge, it's the same principle. And that's not something that you find in politics or in politicians for sure. And he spends a lot of time, a lot of his articles are just pounding on Republicans. And I've chatted with him and we've run a lot of his articles on our website. And I think he's a really good guy. And my guess, and I don't know him personally, but my guess is that he's sick and tired of hearing the excuse of, well, government is a problem, and just as long as you vote for Republicans, straight ticket all the time, just vote for Republicans, then the problem will be less bad or it will go away. Republicans are the small government people. Republicans are the ones that are the constitutionalists. You got to vote for Republicans. You got to support Republicans. You got to give millions of dollars and billions of dollars now to Republicans to fix the country. Well, that is not a solution that any of the founders told us. In fact, the founders warned us of the dangers of factions, of aligning with political party over principle for a long time. And we always say less Republican, less Democrat, more Constitution. It shouldn't matter. We don't really find constitutionalists in the Democratic Party, and I think that's pretty obvious. But we find a lot of people in the Republican Party who claim to be constitutionalists. But when it gets down to it, and as we'll cover here in this article from Lawrence, and I think he makes a pretty good case, that even if there are constitutionalists there, and I think there are some who really want to be constitutionalists or try to be, in the end, it doesn't matter. The results have been the same over and over and over. So it's just going to continue happening. So let's get to, before getting to that, I do want to mention that I'm very grateful for everyone who smashes the like button. So if you're watching us live here, smash that like button. It tells YouTube that they should show the video to more people. Whether it's here live, it may show as a suggested video in the sidebar, or later on it'll show to more people in the archives. And the same goes for other platforms. If you're watching a link through Facebook or Twitter or wherever else, hit that like button, leave some comments. The more activity, the more sharing that you do, the more that the word gets spread, the more people find our show. And our numbers are going up slowly and steadily. And if you add it up across all the different platforms, it's significantly growing consistently. It's not like a huge mainstream media skyrocket where there's a lot of funding behind it. It isn't. You can see if you're watching the video, this is a spare bedroom that I put up a lot of sound reinforcement that I'm continually trying to work to improve. So it's not a well-funded organization, but there's a lot of work and there's a lot of people behind the scenes that work to provide the information to me to share with you that I talk to you about. Larry Clark says, I can't stand the Republicans who try to pass themselves off as constitutionalists but vote big government. And I think that happens over and over and over. And I've hit on Ted Cruz a lot on this show, who was willing to shut down the government over Obamacare, which was the right thing. And the establishment, the neocons, were all over him. Like, you are wasting everyone's time. And they didn't like that because neocons are horrible, of course. And Ted Cruz was actually right when it came to doing that when Obama was in office. But while he's being challenged by a leftist for the Senate, who may end up running for president at some point, he, of course, votes to fund Obamacare just this year. So these people, they're flip-floppers, they're unreliable, they can't be trusted, and we shouldn't trust them. Max Boot and Bill Kristol, they have gotten of the world, have gotten their wars through the Republican Party. Well, and Glenn Greenwald over at The Intercept points out that the so-called resistance is such a fraud because the resistance people who are supposedly opposed to the Trump administration, they vote to hand him more and more surveillance powers. They don't oppose him on war powers. They don't oppose him on anything, really. It's just hypocrisy and political shaming and Russia, and it's nothing of real substance. So it's bad on both sides, but let's talk about the small government party, Republicans, and get to Lawrence Vance's article, which was originally published over at LouRockwell.com just after the election last month, and we ran it over here at 10thamendmentcenter.com as well. And the title is 20 Things Republicans Could Have Done But Didn't. And I'm going to go through that list. I'm just going to read through it because I think it says a lot. But let's go through a few things that Lawrence had to say. He says, although Republicans controlled both houses of Congress under a Democratic president during 2 years of Harry Truman's presidency, the last 6 years of Bill Clinton's presidency, and the last 2 years of Barack Obama's presidency, there have been 3 times in recent history when the Republican Party has had absolute control of the government. So both houses and the presidency. And you'd think if the party of smaller government, the party of the Constitution, I mean, I don't think anyone really believes that, but there are some of the establishment types that'll say, yeah, if you want to support the Constitution, you absolutely have to support Republicans. And they've had total control 3 different times in recent history. It was during part of Eisenhower's presidency, during 4 years of George W. Bush, and then this first term, the first couple of years of Donald Trump. And here's the things that Vance suggested could have been done in those times. Republicans under Eisenhower, he writes, could have repealed the New Deal. Can you imagine how different things could have been? They didn't, and the road was paved for a massive welfare state. Republicans under Bush could have repealed the Great Society. They didn't, and the welfare state expanded again. Republicans under Trump could have repealed Obamacare. Remember, we were going to be rid of Obamacare on day one. And now some people have told me, oh, Obamacare's gone. I mean, they took away the penalty for the mandate, but most of the onerous regulations surrounding Obamacare still exist, and no one's even trying. No one has even been talking about getting rid of it. Of course, they voted for a clean, total repeal over and over and over again while Obama was in office. And I do think, even though I know a lot of that was political grandstanding, it is the right thing for them to do. And in fact, it's right to pressure, if you're going to be calling people in Washington, D.C. to pressure them to do anything, even if they're an establishment crook, you still want to pressure them to do the right thing. And the right thing, of course, is to get rid of Obamacare, because under the Constitution, it shouldn't exist. Same thing with the ATF, the TSA, the DHS, and so many federal agencies and programs. None of these things should ever exist at all. And if someone's going to be elected to a federal office and they're going to take an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, they should do the right thing whether it's popular or not. That's why I go back to Ted Cruz, both loving him and hating him at the same time. and those are probably too strong of words for him, but absolutely supportive of the time where he did the right thing, even though there was no chance of trying to defund, shut down the government over the funding of Obamacare when Obama was in office. Because what it does is it rallies people to the cause. It creates an educational tool. James Madison even talked about this, and I'll cover it briefly a little bit more on the show. In Federalist 46, he talked about raising awareness, how governors should be very outspoken against federal programs that are either bad or unconstitutional, bad policy or unconstitutional, because even though the governors themselves, he wasn't calling on them to be the fulcrum for shutting down those programs. He thought that they were in a position of power and felt that they should take responsibility and rally people to the cause, bring awareness to it. So Ted Cruz had the ability to raise awareness, and I think that was a positive thing. But flip-flopping and then voting, trying to get the thing funded just because, well, he's got to. He's being challenged from the left. He doesn't want to lose an election. Well, what's the point of winning an election if you're going to go back and forth on your oath to the Constitution? You're pointless. And Domo asks, why didn't Obamacare get booted? Most Republicans were against it. And I think we should probably put against in quotes because they certainly were against it when they were against Obama. Now, this is very similar. Now, I was a hard leftist before I found my way to this 10th Amendment movement, to the Constitution, to the 10th Amendment Center, to liberty. I was a hard leftist. I would refer to myself as a Marxist before I recognized that everything government promised was a failure or a lie, or cost way more than whatever they said it was going to cost. And I was part of the anti-war movement. I still am today because, government killing people overseas is not a good thing either. But when I was part of the anti-war movement, as what people know, while Bush was in office in the early to mid-2000s, right after the Iraq War II started, it was mostly communists, Marxists, Democrats, liberals, progressives, Greens, mostly the left. And then you'd find a few libertarians there. And those people were proudly anti-war when George W. Bush was in office. But as soon as January 1st, 2009 hit, and I think that's the date that Obama took office, there was no more anti-war movement. And we know, and I've covered on this show, and we've done a short video here at the 10th Amendment Center, a short 2-3 minute video talking about the number of bombs that have been dropped over the years. And George Bush was seen as the biggest warmonger from this perspective, from that movement, the biggest warmonger in modern times. And we know the numbers from the U.S. Air Force. The Bush administration dropped 70,000 bombs in his 2 terms. Well, what did the Nobel Peace Prize winning Obama, and I spell that B-O-M-B, Obama dropped 100,000. So he was 1.5 times more bombs. And I don't know the number of countries off the top of my head, but he was engaged in war against more countries than even Bush was. So that opposition to imperial policy, to the empire, to unconstitutional, immoral, unjust wars was just a fraud. It was all bull right from the beginning. They were really just opposed to George Bush. I mean, certainly there are some who are consistent, who are really anti-war. And when I was in that activist movement, I was meeting people who were far leftists who were like talking about their activism efforts against Panama back in the day, before my time. So there are a small number of people who are really consistent on these things. But the vast majority of that movement just totally disappeared as soon as Obama came in office, and the policies didn't really change. And in fact, in some ways, they actually got worse. So when we're hammering on Republicans, and I know you guys watching this realize that I'm not having to make excuses for hammering on Republicans, because what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. It doesn't matter. But this problem goes across the political spectrum. The so-called civil liberties people, the resistance that handed an extension of the Patriot Act to the Trump administration when they tell us that Trump is the most dangerous person on earth, is just, it's mind-boggling how fraudulent these people are on what they claim to support. You can't be a resistance to something while handing that something more power. You're a lie. So the resistance today in the Democrat Party is clearly fraudulent. The anti-war movement, much of it was fraudulent. It was really just about, and that's part of what it disheartened me, where I got, and I guess it helped me. It brought me more to liberty, to libertarianism, to the Constitution, to consistent principles, because I was recognizing over time they weren't really opposed to the bombing in Iraq. The signs, the messages, the speeches that they would give were, let's stop spending money on these foreign adventures and spend that money on healthcare at home. Let's get single payer in, or let's get more funding for education. So they really just wanted to redirect the funds into these other programs. And in many ways, people who vote for the National Defense Authorization Act, so this year was almost, around $800 billion, I think, off the top of my head. The increase from last year to this year was more than what Russia spends in the entire year, just the increase. So in many ways, it's the other way around on the right. So they're all very inconsistent. They're all fraudulent. They're really just there to support Team A over Team B and to oppose Team B over Team A. That's all it is. It's about my team versus your team. So Lawrence Vance points out these three major times when Republicans controlled the whole thing. They could have gotten rid of Obamacare. They should have. That should have been day one. And you know what? I would have had to shut my freaking mouth, because I, for a year, was telling people, do not trust these people. I mean, I've been telling people all along, don't trust these people. But we got a lot of pushback during the campaign when Trump was running. Oh, you don't have to worry about this nullification thing. You don't have to worry about gun control. Sorry about my sound on my computer. I will turn that off. You don't have to worry about gun control. You don't have to worry about Obamacare. You don't have to worry about the debt. You don't have to worry about surveillance, all this stuff. Common Core, it's all going to be gone. But none of it actually is gone. The debt is worse. The surveillance is worse. Common Core, contrary to common belief, still is around. Obamacare is still crushing us. We actually just ran an article from a pretty mainstream Federalist Society lawyer and legal scholar talking about Obamacare is still around. There's all kinds of lawsuits still against it. If Obamacare was gone, there wouldn't be court cases trying to end it. And he was making the case for the courts to put it to an end. So Republicans could be doing this, but they're not. They control the whole thing. Trump ran on this. So we can say, and people make excuses. Oh, well, Trump is dealing with the Paul Ryans of the world. And Paul Ryan is garbage. Of course. The guy hates the Constitution. The guy hates liberty. He hates small government. It's really bad. But supposedly, Trump was this great negotiator. He was the guy who was going to get things done, and he's not getting these things done. So he is failing on this, clearly. And I don't want to make it about Trump. It is the party as a whole who we are led to believe is going to bring us less government. But we're getting more government no matter who's in power. And that is very consistent year in and year out. And Vance puts it this way. He says, in baseball, it is 3 strikes and you're out, but not in politics. In the months before the next election, Republicans will tell Americans that they should vote Republican so they can regain control of the House of Representatives in order to rein in government spending, reduce the size of government, restore the Constitution, cut government waste, eliminate unnecessary regulations, fix the economy, and make America great again. And millions of people are going to believe them. Millions of people are going to go out and do this. And just like it has been going, year in and year out, decade in and decade out, government will continue to grow no matter what team is in charge in Washington, D.C. It's because people are using the wrong strategy. They have the wrong solutions. I did an episode talking about the ACLU recently having the wrong solutions. They just don't get it. They're talking about problems with surveillance or forfeiture or policing issues. And then they want Jeff Sessions or his successor. They want the federal government to have power over local police. Well, what's going to happen when the next Donald Trump gets in office that they oppose on everything, that they think is the worst in history? Well, that's the person that's going to have control of local police. So the mentality is pervasive across our society that the solution to a problem that is national in nature has a fix that is national in nature. I mean, if the federal government created the problem in the first place, going to the federal government to fix that problem that the federal government created is not just stupid, it's totally dangerous. So here are the 20 reasonable things that Lawrence Vance says, reasonable, and he's not even listing some of the hardcore things, that Republicans could have done while Trump and the Republicans had majority for these couple of years. 1, bear with me while I read these. If you're watching, you should be able to see them on the screen, but I think they say a lot. Repeal Obamacare in its entirety. Abolish the National Endowment for the Arts. Abolish the National Endowment for the Humanities. Eliminate refundable tax credits. Eliminate the Department of Education. Remember when Republicans used to campaign on getting rid of the Department of Education? No more. Now it's just fixing it or making it work better, being more efficient, block grants to the states, not getting rid of it because it shouldn't exist. Stop cash welfare payments. Cease funding any scientific research on climate change. Means test all welfare programs. Abolish the TSA. Eliminate CAFE standards? I don't know what that is. Allow people to sell their bodily organs upon their death. Interesting. Defund Planned Parenthood. End the federal war on marijuana. I think they might actually do that. End the embargo against Cuba and allow Americans to travel freely there. Eliminate all foreign aid. End all restrictions on the production of hemp. That might happen. Eliminate all funding for manned and unmanned missions to Mars. Privatize Amtrak. Abolish the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and end all FARB subsidies. And he says Republicans could have eliminated daylight savings time, too. Not only could Republicans have done these things, they could have done them the first month they had absolute control of government, but they, as usual, did nothing. And whether you agree with all these things or not, I think is less important than the structural fact that voting for Republicans over Democrats is not getting the job done. Now, that's not to say to go vote for Democrats. I think the solution, and my opinion, I'm just basically regurgitating what I've read from the founders. My opinion is the solution to problems in Washington, D.C. is not Washington, D.C. It's to reject, resist, and nullify these programs on a state, local, and individual level. Lawrence sums up his article, and I want to go to James Madison here in a moment. He says, another Republican majority has come and gone, and with nothing to show for it except a massive welfare state, perpetual war, a federal budget over $4 trillion, and a national debt, it's not really a budget, but the federal spending over $4 trillion, and a national debt nearing $22 trillion. It's crazy town what they're spending. Larry Clark points out in the chat that Republicans don't even vote their party platform. And there are parts of that platform that are very good. And it may even include getting rid of the Department of Education. I have not looked at it in quite a while. Taco Salad says, Paul Ryan supposedly read Atlas Shrugged. EHP Training, thank you for smashing. But for some reason, YouTube has not recorded it. I'm not sure. So I've done this in the past too, and I think maybe it just takes a while to propagate through their servers. If you refresh, maybe after the show, it should show as liked. But if not, let me know. If you guys are seeing that you're hitting that like button and it's not saving that like, then maybe we have a problem. I didn't want to make a big deal out of this, but I do watch the stats on video views. And a recent video that I did on stingray surveillance, it was closing in on 600 views, going up consistently for about a day and a half. Then the next day it was down to 430 and then climbed back up again. So I'm not sure if something's being throttled or if we have some spammers that YouTube is trying to deal with. I am not sure. Gold Standard with Alan Mosley. What's worse is if you run as a Republican, get elected, and then promote Republicans, you will be promote Republicanism. You will be a pariah in Washington, even among your own party. Yeah, they don't, a lot of basically the control of the Republican Party, they hate anyone who's trying to reduce the size and scope of government. So, and that happens in the State House too. And the same thing goes for the left. People who are really trying to do the things that the left supposedly stands for, like opposing war and the surveillance state, asset forfeiture, a lot of times they get sidelined too. They're seen as backbenchers, a problem, because on the major issues, and Tom Woods had a great series of tweets on this. If you follow Tom on Twitter, he had a great series of tweets talking about, he was basically responding to someone who was some Democrat activist in the grassroots who had a pretty significant number of Twitter followers. And she was basically saying, oh, yeah, I mean, George Bush and Michelle Obama, there's this great picture. They're totally different on policy, but they're together at the funeral and they're such great friends. Now, this is what we could do instead of the age of Trump, who's attacking people left and right. And not that I'm defending Trump at all, because clearly I'm not. But Tom was saying, look, what are you talking about? When it gets down to the major policies, people like Bush and Michelle Obama and her husband and the Clintons, these people are all on board. They want to see the Federal Reserve continue. None of them oppose the imperial presence, American foreign policy. They don't stop foreign aid. They want to see more welfare, Medicare, for example. The federalism is not something that they care about. Centralized power is always a thing. So the general principle, the guiding principle, the underlying philosophy in how they approach everything is really the same. And Tom is absolutely correct on that. And for people who ignore that, I think they do that at their own peril, that they think the solution to one or the other is the other party. So what did James Madison have to say? And we did a video a little while back, and this is over on our member site. I see a good handful of members here where we post the full transcript over at our member site at members.10thamendmentcenter.com. A video that is also on YouTube. I should have included this in the show notes on YouTube. I will add it after the show is over. And of course, all of our show notes end up at 10thamendmentcenter.com/goodmorningliberty. So for those of you who don't want to go to YouTube or don't want to go to Facebook or don't want to go to iTunes, you can find all of our platforms where we cross-post this show, either video or audio, over there. And you can listen to the audio version podcast directly on our website too. Again, it's 10thamendmentcenter.com/goodmorningliberty. So James Madison had a flip-flop. I don't know if it was because he was a political hack or if he was just changing his mind or he learned something, or maybe letters to his friend Thomas Jefferson encouraged him to think about something differently. But just before the Philadelphia Convention in 1787, Madison sent George Washington a letter outlining his plan, what he was envisioning for the proper structure of government. This is what we got to do, he was saying. And, hopefully you're going to be here. We really need you here. But this is how I think government should be structured. And one of the things that he proposed, and he felt very strongly about this in this letter, was that he thought the new national government should, quote, have a veto power over all acts of the state governments. A veto power, basically anything that a state government would do, the federal government would be, or the national government, would be able to say, no, you're not allowed to do that. Now, this ended up being introduced as part of the Virginia Plan in May of 1787. Edmund Randolph drafted it. There were, I think, 6 or 8 points in that. And they also called for the federal government, the national government, to use the full force of the Union against any state that did not comply with a national veto or a national rule or a national regulation. They voted on this. They rejected it. So the lesson there is they wanted to have a total control, total national power over everything. They considered it, they debated it, and said, no, this is not the right approach. And what was considered the moderate ground came out of New Jersey, and that was the Supremacy Clause. And that means that federal law is supreme only when it is done in pursuance of the delegated powers of the Constitution, not just everything. Now, a lot of people want you to believe that the Supremacy Clause means that the federal government basically has a veto power. They don't call it that, but they say when state and federal laws conflict, federal law is always supreme. That's what the Supremacy Clause says. But no. It only is supreme if the federal law is in pursuance of the delegated powers of the Constitution. There are 18 in Article 1, Section 8. And a total throughout the document of about 30 to 35, depending on how you count them. There's not a lot of power delegated to the federal government. As Madison put it in Federalist 45, the powers reserved to the states, and that is the people of the several states, are numerous and indefinite. Those sent to the federal government, delegated to the federal government, are few and defined, even though he said it the other way around. So Madison, before the convention, wanted to have this national veto power over everything. It was going to be just a total centralized, total control, central government. It was rejected. They went with a moderate version, the Supremacy Clause. That's been twisted, obviously. But after that was approved, about 9 months later, he was arguing in favor of ratification in New York, where a lot of people thought it was going to fail. George Clinton, the governor, and the Anti-Federalists, which was a term of propaganda, a term of art, they were actually the Federalists, and they complained about that term. The Anti-Federalists, they complained about that. But it was likely that they weren't going to ratify. So Madison, Jay, and Hamilton wrote the Federalist Papers to convince New Yorkers to support ratification. And in Federalist 46, he was responding to concerns that the federal government would have total control over the states. It would basically wipe out the power of the states. And he's like, no, 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 no. Actually, if the federal government encroaches on power, if they violate the limits of the Constitution, or if they just create bad policy, the people in the states have extremely powerful tools at hand. And of course, I'm paraphrasing. But one of the things he recommended was that the states use a refusal to cooperate with officers of the Union. Don't participate in those federal programs. It's basically the strategy we advise on almost everything today. And he said if enough states do this and enough people do this, it would create a situation the federal government would hardly be willing to encounter. In other words, before the convention, his view was we have to have this because without it, and I skipped over this. He basically said without this defensive power, every power that can be given on paper will be evaded and defeated. That's what he was telling George Washington. We have to have this centralized veto power over the state governments because if we don't, they will evade and defeat everything. He didn't get what he wanted, and so afterwards he's selling it to the people saying, look, the states and the people can evade and defeat every federal program. So this is what James Madison said should be done. He didn't say in Federalist 46, when the federal government violates the Constitution or conducts bad policy, you should vote in Republicans. And he didn't say you should vote in Federalists or you should vote in Democrats. He didn't say vote in anybody. In fact, that was totally absent from his advice on what to do. But most prominent of his 4 steps that he recommended was a refusal to cooperate with officers of the Union. And so we recommend that on everything. And in fact, we did make some headway on opposing Obamacare to nullify it by just not participating in the program. The federal government relies heavily on all these regulations on state agencies to implement and enforce them. So, for example, a state Department of Insurance, it's called different things in different states. There is no enforcement mechanism for businesses that don't comply. It's the state departments of insurance, the insurance commissioner in some states, that actually handle the enforcement. So if someone's got a complaint about someone not complying with some regulation about Obamacare, who gets the phone call? It's the state insurance commissioner, and the insurance commissioner deals with the enforcement. So what states could do then, or should do, and we saw this happen in Georgia and Arizona to some degree, I believe, is ban those state insurance commissioners from actually handling the enforcement, because then there's a vacuum, because HHS on the federal level, they don't actually have an enforcement team to deal with Obamacare. So every time you chip away, and this was Madison's advice, you just chip away, you stop participating in these programs, and you break them down. And Judge Napolitano referred to this program. I'm sorry I don't have a link to this. I really need to dig this out. He did an interview talking about just not participating in the enforcement of Obamacare on a state level. And his version was he didn't think that it would totally end it, but he said it would, quote, gut Obamacare. And I will take gutting every single federal program over voting for Team A over Team B any day, because that vote for one side or the other isn't ending any of these federal programs. It just isn't. So I hope you found this interesting. I hope you found it insightful, fun to listen to. If you enjoyed listening to this, please, or watching, please smash that like button, share the link, keep leaving your comments. I love the emails that people are sending to me over at team@10thamendmentcenter.com with some ideas. I got a really nice, nasty, negative one. It says, your effing show is awful. You should end it. So I guess that's encouragement to maybe expand. Maybe we'll go to 5 days a week if we get a lot of those. So I always know that you're catching flack if you're over the target. So we must be doing something right. Our numbers are growing slowly, steadily, consistently. So I appreciate everyone who's been sharing the links, hitting the like button wherever they're watching or listening, leaving some comments, sending emails. It's all very helpful. I really appreciate you spending some time with me today, and I hope you have a great Monday. We'll see you on Wednesday morning, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. And, I wanted to mention, so some shows that I'm thinking about doing, maybe you have some ideas. I want to talk about asset forfeiture, what it is, just kind of an overview of what asset forfeiture is, and the federal equitable sharing program. I think that's a really interesting combo, plus what can be done about it. instead of just complaining about or talking about this problem, what can be done about it? Maybe we can do, I know I've talked about gun rights sanctuary states. Maybe we can go into a little further on that. I also want to do a show on Friday on Bill of Rights Day because Saturday the 15th is Bill of Rights Day. And it's my view that every day should be Bill of Rights Day, although they just make it a one-day-a-year celebration, kind of a trivia question day. So if you've got some ideas on things to cover here, please do share that with me either in the comments or send an email. Again, thank you for watching. I really appreciate you spending some time with me. Thanks to everyone in the live chat, EHP Training, Domo, Existence, Alan Mosley, Larry Clark, Taco Salad, Gerard Perry. Who else am I missing? Richard Robertson, awesome. Domo, I said twice. Well, you get twice because we finally caught us live. So Joseph Standards as well. Again, thank you all for spending time with me today. I appreciate you watching and listening, and I'll see you next time here on Good Morning Liberty.